In part two of the presentation, we were going to be exploring the main issues in chapter 8 to chapter 11 that deals with life and the universe. Chapter 8, titled Why There is Life. We ask first, what is life? For sure, it is not a pure matter. Of course, the supernaturalists believe that it is due to the soul in the body. In science and natural philosophy, life is not a pure substance, but a process in the body of the organism. It is a complex, orderly process in the living organism, which can be described in terms of algorithmic process. Life is a complex algorithmic process made from the integration of countless algorithmic processes in the organism body, like the atoms, protein molecules, and organs, all working harmoniously. Life as an ordered process promoted the idea of living Earth, identified by patterns of dynamic processes between organisms and the planet. The view adopted here is that the Earth's ecological system integrates its living organisms and the non-living component of the Earth, of course, into one ordered physiochemical process. And in that sense, Earth can be regarded as a living entity. In conclusion, the thinking of the mind is electrochemical processes in the brain, as that was discussed in part one. Life is ordered or algorithmic process. So, I mean, the view here actually that this actually eliminates the need for the soul. Instead of soul, there is a process, ordered process. We continue with chapter 8. One important characteristic of organic life is the tendency to increase structural order, while the universe matter tend to disorder. This phenomenon is described by the concept of entropy. Entropy is a fundamental concept in thermodynamics and statistical mechanics that measures the degree of disorder or randomness in a system. The concept of the entropy was invented by Ludwig Boltzmann. So in 1875, he wondered about entropy of life. He noticed that the struggle of the organism to exist is a struggle for negative entropy, which becomes available through the transition of energy from the hot sun to the cold earth. One of the greatest contributor to the quantum theory in physics, Erwin Schrödinger, wondered as well about this phenomenon, and he wrote a book in 1944 titled What is Life? The main question is why the organism is to increase order, which is negative entropy, that contravened the general trend of universal evolution of decreasing order, that's positive entropy. Is it due to supernatural intervention. That's, we're talking about the soul and the body. But the naturalistic point of view, matter at the microscopic level reveals wave-particle duality. So, I meant by microscopic level, the level of elementary particles. The equivalency of waveform to the material form is expressed by de Broglie formula, lambda equal h over mv, where lambda is the wavelength equal h, which is a Planck constant, over m, the mass, multiplied by v, the velocity, mv, of course, the momentum. The duality is dominant in the micro level of elementary particle, as we said. At the molecular level, the wave nature is signified by the modes of molecular movement. The potential modes of molecular movement defines the concept of degrees of freedom. One concludes that there are two opposite tendencies in nature: a tendency to strengthen structural form and a tendency to increase the dynamicity. One, of course, will consolidate, it will strengthen the structure. The other one, actually, to loosen the structure. The first tendency, the maximum it reaches the crystallization, in which actually the minimum movement of atoms within the crystal. The other tendency led eventually to the formation of the amino acid, which led to the formation of protein. In chapter 9, which is titled What Drives the Organism Evolution, if we ask a biologist what drives the organism evolution, the obvious answer most likely to be organism evolution is driven by mutation, sexual reproduction, and a Darwinian natural selection. The usual scenario of organic life evolution would be at warm seawater, the interaction of oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, carbon, aided by the self-organization process, led to the creation of the amino acid molecules. The self-organization is a process where some form of global order or coordination arises out of the local interaction between the component of an initially disordered system. Then the combination of amino acids led to the creation of the protein. At pre-Cambrian era, around 530 million years ago, the RNA is formed from the combination of protein molecules. The RNA, of course, is a self-replication molecule, which eventually led to the formation of the DNA. And through the mentioned three factors, as we said, mutation, sexual reproduction, and Darwinian natural selection, evolutionary process led to the formation of the single cell of organisms, and then to the multi-cell organism. There's a lot of question which is not answered regarding the evolution of the protein, RNA, DNA organism. In my view, actually, Darwinian natural selection is not the driver, but the driven vehicle or mechanism. In my view, the driver of the organism's evolution is a tendency to maintain the dynamic structure that we identify as life. I mean, biological life, of course, a form of sophisticated, ordered structure of that algorithmic structure. In chapter 9, titled What Drives the Organism Evolution, of course, I will depend on my conclusion in the previous chapter. And I will show actually that there is situation in which the usual view is not actually of the three factors cannot really hold, I mean, that view actually is not my view only, but there's over 1,000 doctoral scientists from around the world that have signed a statement publicly expressing their skepticism about the contemporary theory of Darwinian evolution. So, I mean, that actually can be followed through their website, descent from Darwin.org. So it is almost certain that the diversity and complexity of the life on Earth cannot be completely explained by the mechanism of genetic variation, inheritance, and natural selection acting over prolonged time. In that book, actually, in my book, actually, I take the case of the zebra skin stripes, taken from David Attenborough's Life in Color series program on the BBC. It is unlikely that the stripes are the result of unlimited random mutation over prolonged periods, but due to what it is called symbiotic association, where one species benefit from the information about another species, just like the fungi that form symbiotic association with the roots of the planet species. The bright color of poisonous frog that serves as a warning to the predator, and the nectar, and the other example is from the flower that attracts insect to carry seed for pollinations. I suggest an additional factor that contribute to the organism evolution, beside, of course, the three factor which was mentioned. That factor actually usually is meant to limit the randomness. Right? Which may be described in terms of collective life process, CLP, the collective abbreviated as CLP. CLP represent the species in each member, of course, excluding processes of the conscious mind, lifetime memory, knowledge, and skills which are most specific to humans. The CLP virtually unifies species members into one species being, substituting physical bonds between its members by drives that motivate the member to act in the interest of the whole. The CLP in each member of the species interact with living and non-living surroundings gathering information, and responding by excluding a range of mutation variety that are remotely capable of introducing the required evolutionary step. Now we go to chapter 10, which is titled The Falsification of the Supernatural, which is, of course, as we described in the whole chapter, actually, it was all to prove that there's no need for the supernatural. And actually, I start the chapter by the phrase, this chapter will be hammering the last nail in the coffin of the supernatural. In section 10.1, which is introduction, section 10.2 examine the validity of the supernatural being as it is proposed by the intelligent design argument and implicitly hinted by the strong cosmological anthropic principle. The intelligent design argument is an argument for the existence of God, where the universe as a whole is like a machine, and the machines have intelligent designer, of course. The strong cosmological anthropic principle state that the universe has been fine-tuned in its development in order to ensure that life arises. Of course, that kind of hint to somebody or something that led that fine-tuned universe. In section 10.3 offers a rational explanation for the organism's evolution, with no need for the supernatural intervention. In section 10, it debate the proposition that the universe is a living entity and whether it has a mind, of course, not a biological life, but life in the general as ordered processes of its structures. Actually, what provoked that idea that the universe as like a mind, have a mind, is that amazing photo on the left. Actually, is the neural network of the brain, in which those small dots are the cells, and the connection between them, as you can see, form the neural network. On the right here, actually, this is actually the large, the structure of the universe, in which the small dots are galaxies. See the correspondence, galaxies here, I mean, neural cell there. And the connection between the galaxies are the what we call in physics the black matter. That actually, in a strong resemblance, provoke the idea, well, does the universe, is that the brain of the universe, and does that brain have a mind? So I mean that the conclusion, the living universe does not need a mind. A living universe without a mind is like an organism with no neural network, but an instinctive inborn know-how. If you remember talking about the new inborn know-how, which was the instinct and life-supporting systems. And for the universe, it is the nature know-how associated with physical forces actions. So that concludes this chapter. The last chapter, chapter 11, titled The Rational Answer to the Ultimate Existential Questions, I started with a definition of the identity, the personal identity. Personal identity, a discrete and distinct person's mental existence. You compare that to the entity, which is defined as discrete and distinct material object in existence. The suggestion, the identity is it is a person existential space cultivated in the memory during the lifetime experiences and learning, while group identity is a collective mental existential space of individuals who share the same beliefs. I would also like to comment that the class conflict and struggle advocated, of course, by the Marxist philosophy cannot alone explain social history without the tendency of the social groups to preserve their identity. The best example I can bring, actually, which does not, the Marxist class struggle does not really cover this issue, is the example of the preservation of the Jewish identity for more than 2,000 years. That cannot be explained by the Marxist theory. I go through some reinterpretation of some Abrahamic religion myths and legend, which I'm not going to mention here. I go to the important issue of the consciousness. Consciousness is the state of being aware of an external object or something within itself. Consciousness is comparable to life, which is a process in the body of the organism. Actually, it is, in essence, a function and part of the brain to sense and monitor live algorithmic processes and the processes in the sensed world around our bodies. Some scientists say actually that the brain stem and the thalamus are mostly responsible for the consciousness. Consciousness is a mystery, actually, that eluded scientific investigation for generation. Some say consciousness will remain a mystery. Some claim that it is consciousness that created the material universe. That is, of course, the usual idealist idea, not the other way around. Some suggest it is origin in the quantum world of the elementary particle, as we discussed that before. Here, actually, we have an illustration here, actually, represent the state of person consciousness as an almost indetectable, actually, enlarged here, indetectable ripple on top of the unconscious processes. Of course, that unconscious process amalgamate us with the whole existence. Yeah. Oblivious to what lies deeper inside us, which is amalgamated into the whole of the living universe and consequently into the universal unconsciousness. The conscious mind of the human on top of the ripple is our a thinker looking around and wondering why we are not one. Because, of course, he's unaware of the unconscious side of his existence. Yeah. The human on top of the ripple looks around and see discrete entity. The thinker has not realized that the umbilical cord linking him to the whole of existence is in his deepest unconscious. The human conscious mind on top cannot sense the inner continuity. Here is actually the proverb of the conscious mind with its that type of knowledge compared to the inborn know-how, historically known as the knowledge of the heart, was best expressed by the idiom which is uttered by the great mathematician and scientist, I forget his name actually. The heart has its reason that the reason doesn't know. The great scientist is Pascal, the French scientist and mathematician Pascal. Okay, we go to the last section. What is the meaning of my life? The illustration here actually in this section represent the human species being, as we talked about, it's like one being, but it distributed through the bodies of all humanity. This is the person, yeah. This is it. If you remember, it is what part of the existence in each body of us. He is, and here's me. Here's me, and my individual mind, and here are the umbilical code which connect everybody to that species being, human species being. I was thinking while I despair of my imminent death, a deep belief in some kind of afterlife emerged from my unconscious. However, it is an afterlife not in my own flesh and body. My physical life as an algorithmic process in my body will never completely end as long as there is the physical existence of the Homo sapiens incarnating it. Part of my mind's creation will continue its virtual life in the mind of those who knew me or who read my writing. I will be there at the collective unconscious of humanity, peeping out into the consciousness of the individual who remember me. Thank you. There's a lot, of course, which I didn't mention, but that is the end of part 2, actually.